Tonight, we're setting sail for a place far away in time, but very close in feeling. A place of paper walls and moonlight, of sleeves that brush by accident and hearts that never say exactly what they mean. This isn't a tale of epic battles or loud declarations. It's much smaller than that. It's about what love used to feel like. In medieval Japan, where sometimes a look was louder than a poem, and sometimes a poem was all you ever got. So pull the covers a little higher. Let your breath slow. We're going drifting now, into the soft, fleeting, floating world. If you're listening from your bed tonight, maybe pull your blanket up to your chin. Set the fan to hum low. Light your mind like a paper lantern. If you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a quick like, or even a subscribe. It helps more than you know. I'm always curious where you all are listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Love seeing our little global community connect through these stories. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. We're going to explore how people fell in love in medieval Japan. We're going drifting now, through gardens and temples, mist and moonlight, into a place where love unfolded slowly, like plum blossoms in the spring. You wake to the sound of light rain against a paper wall. The air is cool, still, damp with morning. Somewhere, a bamboo waterspout fills, tips and knocks gently, a soft clack that breaks the silence like a slow heartbeat. You lie very still for a while, tucked beneath a thin quilt, listening to a world that doesn't rush. Your breath rises in the chill. The tatami beneath you creaks as you shift your weight. You're not anyone important. Not here. Just a girl, maybe 15, with no family name worth repeating and no marriage plans worth speaking of. You serve in the outer wing of a noble household. Not as a lady, not even as a full attendant, just one of the quiet ones. The ones who learn how to listen without looking up. And yet, this is where your story begins. Not with a fanfare, not with a wedding, but with the way your fingers reach, almost without thinking, toward the paper screen. Because you think you heard his footsteps again. They all fall in love eventually. Even the ones who say they won't. The daughters of noblemen, the girls who sweep the floors, even the monks, even the wives. It starts the same way, softly, like mist before the rain, like a story whispered just before it fades. And in your case, it started 2 weeks ago, when a folded slip of paper appeared beside your comb just before the Spring Moon Festival. No name, just 5 lines brushed in dark ink. The lantern flickers, though the wind has not yet stirred. Someone has passed near. My sleeve, too, trembles slightly. Was it the plum or your scent? You read it over and over until your hands were shaking. It wasn't the words. It was the fact that someone had noticed you. You who had learned how to walk like a whisper. You who didn't even own a mirror. The next morning, you found another poem, and this time, a pressed petal. Plum. You never saw him directly. Not then. But you began to notice when he passed, the way the hall seemed to hush, the faint warmth behind your ears when your eyes met the floor. He was one of the 3rd sons of some high family. You didn't know much. You couldn't ask. All you had were his words, and the way they made your breath catch. You weren't supposed to answer. But one night, when the others were sleeping, their breathing shallow, their hands tucked into sleeves, you took a brush and a scrap of worn paper and wrote 5 lines of your own. If it was not you, then let the wind be my thief, and take the scent back. But if it was your passing, may it pass again, slowly. You didn't sign your name. You didn't have to. You left it on the edge of the veranda and didn't look back. Since then, the poems have continued, quiet, careful, every few days. You don't speak. You don't meet. But you're no longer a girl who wakes in silence. Now, you wake waiting. And in medieval Japan, that is love, or the beginning of it. Not something loud, not something fast, but something like plum petals drifting in a spring breeze. Something small and precious and doomed to pass, but beautiful all the same. You rise from your futon and wrap your kosode around your shoulders. It smells of charcoal and sweet rice, of last night's heat. The floor is cold. The paper walls glow softly with morning, and outside, beyond the veranda, a single plum branch leans in from the garden. You know the poems will stop someday. Love always ends in some form. Marriage, distance, status, silence. But right now, the branch still blossoms, and that is enough. You step carefully outside. There, at the base of the branch, is another folded paper. And suddenly, you are not cold anymore. It was never supposed to go this far. Not really. A poem under a tree was one thing. A folded square, scentless and silent, was safe enough. But now you find yourself waiting. Not for a verse, not for a gesture, but for the shape of someone. In the half-light, when no one else is watching. By now you know his routine. He walks near the veranda before dusk, alone. Always alone. The sleeves of his robe trail just slightly behind him, like the tail of a koi fish gliding through still water. His sandals barely make a sound. You wouldn't hear them at all if you didn't already know what to listen for. You've never been formally introduced. You still don't know his name. But there's a thread now, tied between you both, not visible, not spoken, just felt, like the faint tug of silk in water. You start finishing your chores early, folding the futons a little faster, heating the bathwater just before the bell, always making sure your hands are clean, not for duty, but for the paper, for the ink. You've started keeping a folded slip of rice paper hidden inside your sash, not because you know what you'll write, but just in case. He doesn't always leave something. Sometimes days pass with nothing beneath the tree. And still, you walk there, pretending to sweep, pretending to stretch your legs. The air is warmer now. The plum blossoms have mostly fallen, replaced by tiny green buds, promise of fruit, but not yet. One evening, it happens. You're just setting out the lanterns near the outer corridor when you hear it. Not the brush of sandals this time, but the clearing of a throat, deliberate, quiet. You freeze. A tray of unlit candles still in your arms. Then, his voice, software lower than you imagined, careful, as if picking each word from a scroll and weighing it twice. Forgive me, I didn't want to startle you. You don't turn right away. You're afraid the moment might vanish. But he doesn't leave. You take a slow breath, then another, and turn. He's taller than you realized. Not grandly so, but enough that you have to tilt your chin. His face is calm, the kind of calm that comes from practiced control. But there's a flicker at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, something gentler. You bow, instinctively, too low. You don't need to, he murmurs. Not here. His eyes scan the corridor. It's empty. Still. He takes one careful step forward. Your reply last week, the one about the hush. You meant it? You swallow. Your fingers clench slightly around the tray. The candles are trembling now, but you nod. I did. It's the first thing you've said aloud to him. Your voice sounds strange, soft and high and a little dry, like someone else speaking from within your throat. But he seems to hear it, to understand what it costs you. He doesn't come closer, doesn't touch you. He only says quietly, "Then may I ask for your shadow?" Not just at sunset, but tomorrow, at the koi pond, just once. You say nothing. You don't have to. Your silence becomes permission. He bows and vanishes back into the dark like he was never there. You can't sleep that night. You keep seeing him there, standing still, framed by the dusk. He hadn't looked at you like you were a servant. He hadn't looked away either. Just looked. As though the person you were in your poems, the one who notices plum scents and hushes, was real. The next day, you're up before the sun. You twist your hair twice instead of once. tuck a fresh sprig of mint behind your ear. Your hands shake as you smooth the front of your robe. It's not new, but it's the cleanest one you have. And you walk, quietly, toward the koi pond. It's one of the older corners of the estate, hidden from view, the kind of place where things bloom without being tended, where moss softens everything, the stones, the steps, the time. He's already there, kneeling beside the water, watching the slow, drowsy drift of orange and white shapes below. He doesn't speak at first, just gestures to the step beside him. You sit. For a while, neither of you says anything. It doesn't feel awkward, just still. The air smells of damp wood and cedar smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a bamboo bell knocks once. Then again. "I didn't know how to find you," he says finally. "You move like mist." You glance at him, startled. He smiles. That wasn't a complaint. You smile too, tentatively. It feels strange, like waking up your face after a long nap. "I didn't think you noticed me," you say. "I didn't think I was allowed to." That's how it begins, not with a kiss, not with vows, just with koi gliding lazily through rippling water, and two people trying to speak without breaking the stillness. You talk softly, about nothing and everything. He asks about your village. You ask about his poems. He pretends they're not his. You pretend you believe him. The conversation drifts like lanterns on water. No push, no rush, just following the current. And then, too soon, the moment closes. He rises, dusting off his knees. You stand, too. Same time next moon? You nod. And he disappears. Later that night, while folding linens, you find a paper tucked into the folds. Beneath the still pond, koi stir when no one can see, just so. My thoughts, too. You walked away, but I stayed. Let me follow next time. You press the paper to your lips, not kissing it. Not exactly. Just holding it there, to feel what it's like to be cherished, even if only in brush strokes. In medieval Japan, love often happened in silence. No declarations, no parades, just soft moments hidden between duties. The same koi, the same pond, the same footsteps at dusk, over and over, until the body memorized the rhythm. You hadn't expected it to go this far. But now, every time you breathe, you wonder if he's somewhere breathing too. Love, back then, wasn't always declared. It was implied. A longer glance than necessary. A word chosen too carefully. A hand placed just near enough to make you ache. In your world, the space between two people said more than their closeness ever could. You begin to notice things, little things, barely there. Like how he never crosses the threshold into the kitchen corridor when the other women are around. But when you're alone, when it's just you rinsing vegetables or folding towels, his footsteps pass closer. Once, your sleeves brush, not even skin, just silk against silk. And still, your breath falters. He doesn't leave poems every time now. Sometimes it's a flower, a sprig of something wild, freshly plucked. Not elegant, not arranged. Just there, damp stem, crushed edge, the faintest smear of soil. More honest than any verse. One morning you find a violet, just one, tucked beside your sandals. It's silly, really, but you wear it behind your ear the rest of the day. And when you catch him glancing at you from across the courtyard, you don't look away. Love, in this world, must always be quiet. You understand this. He does too. There are watchers. Not cruel, not nosy. Just ever present. The house steward, the older maids, the seamstress with eyes like a hawk and a tongue like a spindle. They've started to notice how often you sweep the same corridor, how often his sandals pause where you stand. You hear your name whispered behind paper screens. Laughter, not unkind, but laced with warning. Still, you don't stop. Not yet. He finds new ways to pass you. A shared errand, a request for tea. Once, he pretends to be looking for a book and ends up in the storehouse where you're grinding ink. You don't speak that time. Just sit in silence as the ink stick circles and circles the stone. He watches your hands. You watch his eyes. It's more than enough. There's a path behind the kitchen where the bamboo grows thick. The others don't go there. Too many mosquitoes, too little light. But one evening, after the kitchen fire is banked and your sleeves still smell of smoke and daikon, you walk there. You don't expect to see him. And yet, he's waiting. He doesn't say your name, still doesn't ask yours. He just reaches into his sleeve, slowly, deliberately, and pulls out a comb. Plain, carved wood, not expensive, not lacquered, but gently polished, worn with use and warmed by his skin. For you, he says. It belonged to my mother. You don't reach for it, not at first. This is the kind of thing that means something. You stare at it, the shape, the quiet curve of it. It's not the comb that touches you. It's the offering. No one gives something so personal unless they've already given their heart. You reach for it slowly. Your fingers brush his, and for the first time, he doesn't pull away. The comb stays hidden inside your sleeping mat. No one sees it, but you know it's there. Sometimes you hold it before bed, just for a moment, as if it could comb through your thoughts, untangle what you dare not say aloud. You don't use it. Not yet. Spring slides towards summer. The air thickens. The lanterns sweat wax, and your footsteps grow quieter. Because love in this place is not allowed to bloom where everyone can see. One afternoon, while carrying folded linens across the eastern hall, you nearly collide with him. You're both moving too quickly, around a blind corner. The cloth spills between you. You both reach to catch it. And then, your fingers wrap over his. Not by accident, not quickly, not this time. The breath between you is held, suspended. He doesn't move, neither do you. And then, very softly, he presses your fingers, just once, before letting go. Nothing more. But everything has changed. After that, things grow quieter, not colder, just cautious. He walks further apart from you now, only leaves poems, not flowers, avoids the kitchen. You miss him. But somehow you understand. This is how people fell in love back then, in seasons, in silences. When you couldn't always reach, you watched. When you couldn't speak, you waited. Because the waiting was love. You go back to the pond sometimes, alone. You sit on the same stone step where your sleeves once touched. Trace the edge with your fingers. The koi don't know the difference. But you do. One evening, you find a folded paper tucked inside the sleeve of your robe. You didn't feel it there before. But now, it's warm from your skin. You unfold it slowly. I walk apart, to shield the space between us. But I never left. When the moon turns full, wait beneath the pine. If your heart still lingers, I will find you there. You fold it again, press it to your chest, and count the days. There are nights when the world holds its breath, when the sky forgets to blink and the wind steps barefoot through the grass. The night of the full moon is one of them. You do not sleep. You lie still on your side, eyes open, hands folded beneath your chin, pretending. Pretending for the women around you who sigh and turn in their straw mats, who dream of rice harvests and festival music and nothing at all. You rise only when the room is dark enough to hide you, not hurried, not afraid, just soft-footed and certain. You slide your robe over your shoulders and tie it loosely at the waist, a plain one, unpatterned, unremarkable. The kind you wear when scrubbing the storehouse or chopping roots. And yet, when you touch the sleeve, it feels like something sacred. The pine tree waits just beyond the outer courtyard, past the low stone wall that marks the edge of the manor's reach. You've walked that path before, carrying pails, gathering herbs, watching fireflies. But never like this, not with the moon full and expectant, not with your heart in your throat and your feet barely grazing the ground. He is there. You know it before you see him. You can feel it, like warmth through paper, like breath before the flame. He stands with his back to the tree, hands folded in his sleeves, head tilted up toward the moon. He doesn't hear you approach. Or maybe he does and chooses not to startle you. It doesn't matter. Because when you stop, just a few steps away, he turns. And the look in his eyes is quiet thunder. For a long moment, neither of you speaks. The wind speaks for you. It stirs the sleeves of his robe, tugs at the loose strands of your hair. Even the pine branches bend a little, as if listening. "I didn't think you'd come," he says softly. "I almost didn't," you whisper. It's true. All day you'd imagined the dangers. What could be said, what could be taken from you if someone found out. But none of that mattered now, because he had waited, because you had come. He motions toward the base of the pine, where a flat stone sits half buried in the moss. You sit beside him, not touching, but close enough to feel the space between you hum. And then he places something in your hand, a piece of paper carefully folded. You unfold it slowly. It's a painting, tiny, no larger than your palm. Ink on rice paper, just 2 pine needles, crossed. You look up. "I painted it this morning," he murmurs. "So I wouldn't forget this moment, even if you didn't come." You hold it like a talisman. There are no poems tonight, no riddles, just this. He leans back slightly, resting his shoulder against the tree. You do the same, and together you watch the moon. It glows above like a guardian lantern, round and silent and far too bright for secrets. But the shadows at your feet still feel like shelter. He doesn't ask to touch you, doesn't reach for your hand, but the side of his robe brushes yours, and neither of you moves away. You talk about nothing and everything. The way the koi eat faster when the rain is coming, how the roof tiles whistle when the wind is wrong, how he once saw a fox walking upright like a man in the mist. You don't talk about the rules, or the risk, or what happens when love becomes visible. You both already know. Tonight is not for futures. It is for being, right here, right now. At some point, his voice goes quiet, and yours does too. The moon climbs higher, casting long shadows down the path. You know you must go. Dawn is not far, and if anyone sees the shape of your absence, they'll begin to guess. You rise first. He does not stop you, just watches as you smooth your robe, as you tuck the painting safely beneath the edge of your sash. You look at him one more time. He bows. A full, silent bow, head lowered, arms still in his sleeves. A bow that says what he cannot. That if this is the only night he's allowed, he will carry it like a lantern in his chest for the rest of his life. You bow in return. Not as deep, but slow, full of meaning. And then you walk back the way you came, your footsteps soft, your shadow longer than your body. When you return to the sleeping room, no one stirs. You slide under your mat, careful not to rustle. The comb is still hidden inside the weave. You press your fingers to it, and then to the paper in your sash, and you breathe. This is how people fell in love back then, not with declarations, not with fireworks, but with nights like this, borrowed from time, folded in ink, and lit only by the moon. There are seasons when everything changes, not all at once, but slowly, like leaves turning. Not loud like drums, but soft like footsteps. You wake, and suddenly the light has changed. The wind through the shutters smells of plum blossoms now, not smoke, and something inside you has changed too, though no one sees it. The household moves as it always does. The older women rise early to stir the fires. The young ones sweep the veranda and fold the bedding. Chores pass from hand to hand in an unspoken rhythm. Rice, tea, water, cloth. But now your hands remember him. They move as they did before, but with a new softness in the wrists, a hush in the fingertips. He does not send another note. You didn't expect one. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't risk it again. The household has eyes, not cruel, just sharp. But that doesn't stop you from watching the paper door each time it opens, or from listening a little harder to every footstep on the walkway. He passes sometimes, not often, not enough. But when he does, when he walks past the east veranda or stands in the shade of the plum tree, you look. And he looks too. A glance can carry 1,000 thoughts in it. A whole conversation, a promise, a goodbye. The first time it happens, you nearly forget to bow. He's coming from the inner garden, a brush tucked behind his ear, the long sleeves of his dark robe streaked with ink. You're carrying a tray of rinsed bowls from the kitchen, the weight even across both palms. The others speak around you. Someone laughs, someone complains about the cook's sour miso. But your eyes find him, just for a breath. And his eyes find yours. That look is not an accident. It is slow and full and unblinking. He does not smile. That would be too much. But his shoulders draw back slightly. His step hesitates. 1, maybe 2 beats. Then he walks on, and you hold that moment like something fragile and warm in your hands, something that could vanish with a gust of wind. There are more moments after that. A shared silence during afternoon tea as you kneel at opposite ends of the hall. His reflection in the lacquered tray as you pass behind him. The subtle turn of his head when you offer the inkstone, the way his fingers brush yours, so lightly it could be called a mistake. But you know it wasn't. There are rules, of course, not just those written down in scrolls or murmured behind screens, but the deeper ones, the ones carved into the bone of the world. A servant girl does not love the house scholar. A man with a family name does not exchange glances with a girl who sleeps on straw. But hearts do not bow to rules. They move how they wish, like ink in water, like wind among reeds. One afternoon, the head housemaid asks you to bring a folded robe to the scholar's quarters. It's early spring. The robe smells faintly of cedar. You hesitate, just long enough that the woman looks at you sideways. But you bow and take it with both hands. The walk across the courtyard is short, but it feels endless. You do not knock right away. You smooth your sleeves. You swallow once, twice. And then you slide the door open with a careful hand. He is inside, alone, bent over a scroll, brush poised mid-stroke. He doesn't look up, not right away. You kneel, place the robe on the mat beside him, bow low. When you rise, his eyes are on yours. "Thank you," he says softly. You nod. You should leave. Your hands are already pressing to your knees, your weight shifting. But then, so softly you almost miss it, he adds, "Did you keep the painting?" Your breath catches. You glance to the side, at the inkstone, the rolled brushes, the folded cloth on the desk, then back at him. You nod, just once. His eyes close for a beat, and then he opens them again, and they are full of something unspoken. You bow again, deeper this time. He does not bow in return, but his hand brushes the edge of the robe you placed down, almost like he is reaching for yours. And then you're walking backward, sliding the door shut with the quiet grace of someone who knows exactly how far they can go, and no farther. Later that evening, the head maid praises your quietness. "You've become less clumsy," she says, frowning as she chews. You smile, not wide, not obvious, but your fingers press once against your sash just beneath the fold where the painting still sleeps. This is how people fell in love back then. Not in letters or confessions, not in declarations beneath cherry trees, but in still glances across a courtyard, in the space between hands, in robes folded with care, in the silence that said more than words ever could. Some things bloom only once. You know this as the trees begin to blush, not fully open, not yet, but close. Close enough that the air begins to smell like memory. The courtyard fills with soft wind. White-pink petals fall like sighs. The walls are the same. The days still move slowly, one after another. But something inside you has loosened. You begin to rise earlier than the others. It starts with a cough from the mat beside yours, or the soft rustling of rats in the thatch. But you stay up. You fold your bedding more carefully. You carry water to the courtyard basin just as the sun peeks over the wall. You're not alone. He's there sometimes. Not always, but sometimes, sweeping leaves with quiet precision, placing a dish of water by the inkwell, stretching his shoulders beneath the plum tree's crooked arm, and neither of you speaks. But there is something about sharing a sky before the house wakes up. The first blossom falls on your shoulder without warning. You don't brush it away. You pretend not to notice. But he notices. You know he does. His brush hovers above the scroll. His eyes flick once to the soft petal resting against your sleeve. It stays there longer than it should. There are risks, of course, always risks. The older maid has begun to watch you differently. Her eyes linger when she passes you in the corridor. She frowns when your tasks finish too quickly. She grunts when your sleeves seem too clean for kitchen work. One day, she pulls you aside. You think she will speak. You brace yourself. But instead, she says, "You dream too much." And that's worse, somehow, because it means she knows. In the afternoon, you wash the scroll cloths behind the storeroom. He comes to fetch inkstones. The air is thick with pollen, but he doesn't sneeze. "I had a dream," he says, almost idly, "that a crane walked across my writing mat." You don't respond. You squeeze water from the cloth. Your fingers shake just slightly. "Do you believe in dreams?" he asks. You look at him then, really look, and say, "Only the ones that return." He says nothing more that day. But the next morning, there's a brush tucked behind the basin, left there as if by accident. It's not his best brush. It's worn, bristles beginning to fray. But still, you carry it inside your sleeve. Later, when you're alone, you turn it between your fingers like it's something sacred. It still smells faintly of ink and cedar. You place it beneath your bedding that night, like a charm. Cherry petals pile thick in the courtyard now. They sneak into shoes, into soup, into your sleeves. One morning, you find one pressed flat in the folds of a clean robe meant for the mistress. You pause, frowning. You know the mistress didn't place it there. You smooth it out carefully and leave it. Later, you catch him glancing toward that robe when the lady walks past. You say nothing, but you understand. He's learning how to speak without words, too. A week passes, then 2. The petals begin to thin, the branches green again. Another season already slipping past. You haven't spoken again. Not really. Just the small, quiet things. A tray placed near his mat. A bowl warmed before it's passed to your hands. A gesture toward the garden path just before he walks down it. This is what courtship looks like in silence. This is what love means when you cannot speak it. Then one night, a storm comes. It starts with wind, sharp, snatching wind. Then rain. Then thunder. You're awake through most of it, though you pretend to sleep. Rain drums on the roof like someone begging to be let in. The fire gutters low. In the dark, your fingers reach for the brush beneath your mat. It is dry, whole, still yours. Somehow, that is enough. The next morning, the courtyard is littered with torn petals and broken twigs. The tree looks thinner, almost embarrassed. But the sky is clear. The air smells new again. You walk to the well and see him standing beside the tree trunk. There is a split in the bark, a wound from the storm. He's touching it gently, like mourning. You say softly, "Will it live?" He looks up. "Yes," he says. It always does, but never in quite the same way. Then he smiles. A real one. Small, tired, private. But just for you. And that's the moment. That's when it shifts. It doesn't need a kiss, or a poem, or a runaway escape across mountain paths. Just a smile, a glance, a tree that survived the wind. A morning when nothing is said, but everything is finally understood. This is how people fell in love in medieval Japan. Not by holding hands in public, not by promises, but by surviving seasons together, by noticing the petal on a sleeve, by remembering which dream returned, by knowing when to smile and when to look away. You'd think that once two people feel something, the hardest part is over. But in your world, in this household, under this roof, inside these silences, that's when the real danger begins. It's not falling in love that brings trouble. It's being known for it. And one morning, something changes. The old maid watches your hands a little too closely as you prepare the rice. She doesn't speak, just watches. Then she says, flatly, "You stir too gently." Rice needs conviction. You bow. You don't meet her eyes, but your heart pounds. There's a reason most people in love here never act on it. Love isn't a path. It's a corner. A place you turn into accidentally, then pretend you never meant to step into. The young calligrapher, he still doesn't speak much to you. But his eyes do, and so do his hands. A cup placed half a finger closer. A brush tied with the same thread as the one tucked in your sleeve. A quiet glance when you hum, thinking no one hears you. These are the things that make your chest ache, and you start making mistakes. The first mistake is small. You linger too long when passing the sliding door to the study room, just half a breath longer than usual. He looks up. You catch his eye. Neither of you smiles. But someone else notices, a younger maid with quick eyes and quiet feet. She says nothing, but the air shifts. The second mistake, a sleeve. You're passing him in the hall. The house is quiet, midday, no one's near. He walks past and your sleeves brush. You pause. So does he. For half a second, neither of you moves. That's all. But it's enough. The contact. The way your shoulder lingered half a moment longer than needed. The way your breath caught like you'd swallowed the sun. He walks away. You go the other direction. But it was a mistake. The third mistake doesn't belong to either of you. It comes in the form of a letter. Not a love letter, nothing like that. Just a note addressed to the mistress of the house, left on her ink tray, neatly folded, written in clean, practiced strokes. Only, it wasn't her usual calligraphy assistant who wrote it. And someone noticed. The brushwork was slightly different. Yours. You'd only meant to help. Just one sentence. A favor passed quietly to him while the lady napped. He had smiled, that rare, grateful one. You'd felt warm for days afterward. But someone noticed. The paper was traced, the style questioned, and now you're being watched again. You sleep more stiffly now. Your dreams return, but they feel heavier. The old maid watches you even when she isn't looking directly at you. Other maids whisper in corners. The kitchen is colder, the air sharper. Then, one evening, a visitor comes. A cousin of the master, a low-ranking samurai with gray in his beard and sharp creases at the corners of his mouth. He sits long with the master. Voices drift behind screens. Sake is poured. Laughter comes in short, dry coughs. Later, the mistress calls you. You kneel, hands folded. She smiles, gently, but it's the kind of smile that means something has already been decided. You've been in this household long, she says. Quiet, careful. You bow. She continues. It's time we begin thinking of your future. You freeze. She says the samurai visitor has a household in need of a second wife. There are no children. His first wife died last spring. He's generous and clean-tempered. And your hands are steady. You don't talk much. You'd be a good match. The conversation ends there. You bow again. You are dismissed. That night, you don't sleep. You turn the brush in your hands. The old one, the one he left behind the basin weeks ago. You turn it again and again, the bristles soft, splintering. You think of his hands, of the time he told you a crane crossed his mat in a dream. You think of the sleeve that lingered too long. And you know what he'd say if you told him about the samurai. He'd say nothing, because he understands, because there is no other ending for girls like you. The next morning, you go to the courtyard early again. Cherry petals are gone, the branches are green and bare. He's already there, sweeping. You kneel by the basin, you wash a rag, slowly. Neither of you speaks, but you feel it. The weight of the unsaid. You place the brush gently beside the stone basin, the one he gave you. It's a goodbye. He sees it, but doesn't pick it up. Instead, he looks at you with something like pain, then nods, once. Software like a bow to something sacred. This is how people fell in love in medieval Japan, quietly, deeply, but not freely, and often not forever. You don't pack your own things. The older maid does that, folding each piece of your clothing with the slow, deliberate movements of someone who has seen too many girls leave. "This one's worn thin," she mutters, holding up your winter undercassode, the one with the faded pine needle print. You nod. You've worn it for years, and when it's cold, it smells faintly of camellia oil and old soot. She replaces it anyway. The new one doesn't smell like anything yet. The mistress has arranged everything with calm elegance. The samurai's household is small, inland, near the foothills. No children, 2 servants, a quiet garden. There is no mention of love, only suitability. She tells you it's a fine arrangement, that you've done well, that you've been dutiful, quiet, useful. You nod again. The words don't mean much now, not when your body already feels like it's being lifted and folded and sealed away, like the winter kimono, to be opened again in a house where no one will know your humming voice or the way you walk with your right foot slightly turned out. You are to leave in 5 days, and somehow 5 days feels like 5 breaths. The boy, the calligrapher, hasn't spoken to you since the sleeve, but on the second day, you see him in the corridor. You are carrying a tray of lacquered bowls. He is sweeping. You pass. You don't look. But he does. He always does. And just before you turn the corner, he says quietly, "Will it snow where you're going?" You pause. You don't answer. But later, you leave a single folded note beside the brush basin. Just a word. The name of the province. Shinano. You don't expect anything. But the next morning, someone has placed a tiny folded square on your pillow. Inside, they say Shinano has more stars than people. No name, no signature. But it's his brushwork. You'd recognize it anywhere. He left the Na character open at the top, like he always does. Your heart hurts, not in a loud way, not even a sharp one. It's more like your body's been holding its breath for too long, and now it doesn't know how to exhale. You try not to cry when the old maid dresses you in your leaving kimono, but your hands tremble. She notices, and for once she doesn't comment. She just tightens your obi a little more gently and brushes the back of your hair twice with her fingers. It's early the next morning when the palanquin arrives. Dark lacquered wood, gold-painted chrysanthemum crest. 2 bearers, both strangers. The mistress hands you a small pouch with your name embroidered in red silk thread. Inside are 3 things: a comb, a strip of lavender paper, and a single silver coin. She does not hug you, but she touches your sleeve and says, "You were a good girl." You bow so deeply your nose brushes your knees. You do not look back at the house, but at the gate. He is there, standing near the plum tree that has not bloomed in 2 seasons. His eyes are red, or maybe that's just the morning light. He doesn't speak, but as you step into the palanquin, you let your hand drop the smallest object from your sleeve, a ribbon, white silk, folded once. He picks it up, slow and careful, as if it's something sacred. You do not look back, but you feel his gaze long after the gate has closed. The road away from the estate is bumpy, but inside the palanquin it's quiet. Just the sway of motion and the memory of stars. You close your eyes and imagine a province where no one knows your name, but maybe, just maybe, the night sky will remember the sleeve that lingered too long. This is how people fell in love in medieval Japan, with eyes, with silence, with words never said. And this is how they let each other go, by pretending they never held on. The palanquin creaks, not loudly, just enough to remind you that it is carrying you somewhere unfamiliar. The path beneath the bearer's feet is packed dirt, narrower now, veined with tree roots and pine needles. The further you go from the capital, the more the world folds in on itself. Not smaller exactly, but quieter. In the distance, somewhere behind you, Kyoto still sings with poems and perfumes and gossip layered over decades. But none of that can follow you here. This part of Shinano smells like wet wood, barley straw, and the early promise of snow. You don't cry. You're not sure you even know how anymore. By late afternoon, the palanquin stops. The door slides open and the servant, a woman maybe 10 years older than you with a sun-darkened face and hands like a carpenter, bows once. "This is your home now," she says. And she doesn't mean it kindly, not unkindly either, just plainly. The house is smaller than the estate you left, a gate of unpainted cedar, a narrow entryway where someone once left their shoes askew, a garden in need of pruning. But everything is clean. Unloved, maybe, but clean. The man you're meant to marry is not there. He's gone to inspect something, land, perhaps, or cattle, or grain taxes. The servant isn't sure. "He goes off for days," she says, shrugging. "He always comes back." You nod. There is no room to feel anything about it. Your room faces the garden. There's a mulberry tree with limbs low enough to touch, and stones arranged in a winding, uneven path that leads nowhere in particular. At night, you listen for crickets, not voices, not footsteps, not even poetry, just insects and wind. The servant brings you dinner without ceremony, rice, boiled radish, and a little fermented plum. She doesn't speak unless you ask, so you don't ask. You eat in silence and wonder what he's like, the man whose house this is, the man whose last name you now carry, the man whose hands probably do not know how to hold a brush the way he did. You shouldn't think of him anymore, but you do. You always do. 3 nights pass, then 4. On the 5th, just after sundown, you hear the thud of hooves and the rustle of straw sandals. The door opens. He's taller than you imagined, broad-shouldered, dust still clinging to the hem of his traveling cloak. You bow. He nods. That's it. His name is Masanori. He speaks plainly. He eats quickly. He thanks you once for the tea. And then he sleeps on the other side of the room, facing the wall. No poems, no questions, no cruelty either. Just space and silence. By the end of the week, you know his habits. He wakes before the sun. He sharpens his blade even if he doesn't plan to use it. He doesn't pray. You keep the house in order. You fold the linens, wash the rice pot, tend to the edges of the garden. No one writes here. No one speaks of art. But one morning, as you sweep the entryway, you find something small tucked behind the lintel. A ribbon. White silk. Folded once. Your heart stops. Then starts again. Not faster, not louder, just aware. But it isn't the ribbon from before. It's newer, thicker, with a small notch cut in one end. You stare at it. The only person who might have left it is Masanori. But you never told him. You never even mentioned it. Later that evening, you test the waters. "You folded my kimono well," you say softly, handing him a bowl. He glances up. "You were gone when I arrived. I assumed it wasn't your hand." He pauses a moment. Then, "It wasn't." Back to silence. But then, after a long moment, he adds, "It was hers. My first wife. She used to do that with ribbons." You nod. He doesn't say her name, doesn't offer more, and you don't ask. But the next day, you place one of your own sleeves near the window to dry and fold it the same way. Just once. A quiet offer. A half gesture. He notices. Doesn't say anything. But that night, he leaves you the bigger half of the plum. It isn't love. Not yet. But it's the kind of beginning that can only happen when two people have been strangers long enough to miss something, anything, that feels like reaching. You still think of the boy sometimes, the one with the ink-stained fingers, but you no longer feel like you're being punished for it. You're just remembering. And now something else is beginning. Something wordless, something folded, like love maybe, if you don't open it too fast. You've been in the mountains long enough that the seasons have stopped surprising you. Autumn turned the hills amber, winter dusted the thatched roof white, and now spring has returned, shy and slow, coaxed out by frogs and melting frost. Your hands are rougher now. You no longer wear silk every day, and your sleeves often smell faintly of rice bran and soap. You're not unhappy, not exactly. You've learned that being content is something quieter than joy and harder to notice until it's already there, folded into the corners of ordinary days. And one of those days, just before the peach blossoms open, the servant, her name is Ota, you finally asked, tells you the bathhouse is open again. You hadn't known it ever closed. Too cold in the deep winter, she says. The water freezes in the pipe. You nod. She hands you a fresh towel and a small bundle of camellia oil for your hair. You thank her softly. And for the first time in months, you leave the house without needing a reason. The bathhouse sits just past the edge of the village, down a stone path half covered in moss, where the trees lean forward like eaves over a gate. Inside, the steam hits you like a soft fog. The room smells of cedar, pine resin, and something like orange peel. Other women are there already, two older, one younger, scrubbing their backs, pouring hot water from wooden buckets, hair unpinned and heavy down their backs. You bow. They nod. No one asks your name. No one stares too long. Here, in the bathhouse, everyone is made equal by steam and skin. You lower yourself into the water slowly, careful not to splash. It's hotter than you expected, not scalding, just enough to make your pulse slow down. Your limbs begin to loosen. Your shoulders fall. You realize you've been holding them up for weeks, maybe months, maybe your whole life. You close your eyes. And for a few long, wordless minutes, nothing exists but the warmth of the water and the sound of wooden buckets being set down gently. Then a soft voice beside you. I saw your husband fixing the well. You blink. The woman next to you, maybe your age, with high cheekbones and a mole under one eye, is looking at the wall, not at you. He climbed right in, she continues. Said the bucket rope was fraying. You manage a smile. That sounds like him. She nods. Doesn't speak much, does he? You let out the smallest breath of a laugh. Not unless he has to. The woman smiles faintly. They're like that, mountain men. She doesn't say more, but the steam makes everything feel softer, less dangerous. So you ask, yours the same? A pause. Then, worse. She laughs, but it's not unkind. They think quiet is the same as strength, she adds. I think they just don't know how to say anything that won't fall apart when spoken. You sit with that a moment, and somehow it feels like a kind of comfort. After a while, the others leave. The older women bow, gather their towels, and shuffle off into the cold air outside. Only you and the woman with the mole remain. She leans back, arms stretched across the rim of the bath, hair damp and loose. What did you do before you came here? She asks. You hesitate. You haven't said it aloud since you left. I served at court, you say. She turns to you, eyes briefly wide. You don't move like a farm wife, she says. You smile again, this time a little fuller. No one here does, you reply. We just learn. She nods. The water laps gently at your collarbones. You watch a trail of steam curl toward the rafters, and you wonder what she sees when she looks at you. Not the silk, not the palace, not the poems, just you. Then she speaks again. I used to sing. You turn. Not well, she adds, but loud. In the mornings, mostly, before the grain was milled. Do you still? She shrugs. No point. But her eyes soften. She doesn't sound regretful, just resigned. And it makes you ache a little, that someone who used to sing has forgotten how to begin. You want to offer something, a memory, a gesture, anything to fill the stillness between you. So you reach behind your neck and untie the string of your towel, just enough to let your hair fall fully into the water. She watches. I haven't done that in years, she says. Then she does the same. Two women, shoulders bare, hair drifting like ribbons in the quiet pool. Not lovers, not friends, not strangers either. Just two women learning how to breathe again. Outside, the wind has shifted. You step into your sandals, both of you damp and pink-skinned, and she offers you a comb from her sleeve. You don't ask how she knew you forgot yours. She begins to run it gently through your hair, and neither of you says anything about it. It's not affection, quite. Not seduction. But in this moment, as a crow calls once from a persimmon tree and a bead of water trails down your spine, it feels like love. The quiet kind. The kind that can be carried home without being spoken of. There are things you think of saying, but never do. At first, it was because there was no one to listen. Then it became habit, like tying your sash the same way every morning, or checking the rice pot before the steam has stopped rising. A quiet, unconscious thing. And then you remembered letters. In court, writing was everything. Lovers, friends, rivals, even enemies. They all spoke more with ink than with voices. The right poem could open a heart. The wrong brushstroke could end a reputation. But here, in this village in the mountains, letters are mostly lists, debts owed, goods promised, grain weighed out in bushels. The paper is thicker, the ink stains more. Still, some part of you longs for the feel of a brush in your hand. So one day, when your husband leaves before dawn to deliver a pail of miso to the temple on the ridge, you take out an old packet of mulberry paper you brought with you from the capital. Folded so many times, it's become soft at the edges. You light the inkstone. You grind the stick until the water darkens. You sit by the window where the light falls just right. And you begin. You don't address it. There's no need to. No one will read it but you. Still, your brush hovers for a long moment. What do you even say after all this time? You don't talk about love in the usual way. No fire, no longing, no cherry blossoms trembling in the breeze. Instead, you write, "You would laugh to see me now." I kneel in the kitchen and wash rice with fingers that once traced verses onto silk. My hands remember things my voice has forgotten. You pause. Then you add, "There is kindness here. Small, but steady. I have learned that love does not always speak in poems. Sometimes it pours tea, or rubs liniment into a sore shoulder, or fixes the roof without being asked." You stop there. Let the brush rest. You don't cry. That part of you has grown quieter too. But you fold the letter carefully and tuck it into your sleeve. Not to send, just to keep. You begin writing them more often after that. Not every day. Just when the words ask to come out. They go into a box under the floorboards, wrapped in cloth, tied with cord, hidden in the same place you keep the silken underrobes you never wear anymore, and the one hairpin you didn't trade away. Sometimes they're addressed to people long gone, your mother, your sister, a maid who once helped you sneak persimmons into the garden. Sometimes they are to no one in particular, but more and more they are to him, your husband, the man who wakes before the rooster, who doesn't speak unless he must, who leaves the last pickled plum for you every morning. You don't know what these letters are. You're not sure they're love, but they are something close. One morning, he finds one. You didn't mean for that to happen. You must have left it tucked inside your sleeve too long. Or maybe the cord on the box loosened when you swept the floor too roughly. You see it in his hand as you enter the room. He's not reading it, not yet. Just holding the folded paper, brows drawn as if trying to decide whether it's a receipt or a spell. He looks at you. You freeze. And then, gently, not accusing, he asks, "What is this?" You don't answer. Not because you're ashamed, but because you're not sure what name to give it. He studies your face. Then slowly he holds it out to you. "I didn't read it," he says. "But it smelled like camellia oil. I thought maybe it was for me." You take it from him with both hands. A proper gesture. Your fingers brush. You hesitate. Then you say, "It's not for anyone." He nods once, accepts that, but he doesn't walk away. Instead he asks, "Would you write one for me sometime? One I can read?" The air feels very still. You didn't expect him to say that. You nod, just once. And that night, after he's asleep, you write the first letter you intend someone to read. You keep it simple. You don't use court metaphors or tangled symbols from poetry. You just write what you saw. You pulled a splinter from your palm today. I watched you do it without flinching. I thought, then, how strange it is that I share a roof with a man who feels pain quietly and still goes to work with both hands. And you left the door unlatched last night. I should have scolded you, but the breeze smelled like pine needles and thawed earth, and it reminded me that spring is coming, so I forgave you. And I dreamed you were younger. Not the boy you once were, but the boy you could have been if someone had given you warm rice and gentler winters. You sign it only with your initial, then place it on his pillow. In the morning, he reads it, says nothing, but that evening there's a fresh bundle of firewood beside the door, neatly stacked, bark cleaned off. A small gesture, not a poem, not a vow, not even a smile. But you know what it means, and somehow that's enough. You keep writing, not every day, just enough. Sometimes you leave them where he can find them, tucked into his sleeve, hidden in the lining of his sandal, wrapped around a piece of dried plum. Other times you keep them folded in your own robes. Love, you're learning, doesn't always need to be delivered to be real. Sometimes just writing it down is enough. There are kinds of love you do not speak of, not because they are shameful, but because they would break apart under the weight of words. In the hush of temple life, silence is not just a discipline, it's a language. It wraps around you like a second robe. After a while, you stop reaching for sound at all. You listen to the world instead, to the wind combing through pine needles, the snow falling soft against wooden eaves, the clink of the ladle against the water basin. It is here, in this quiet place, that you first see him. You've come to the temple not as a pilgrim, but as an errand girl. Just once a week, delivering cloth scraps and rice cakes from the village women. A simple task. You were told the monks won't look at you, won't speak unless necessary, and won't remember your name. But he does. It starts with a bow. Nothing more. Just the way he lowers his head slightly when you arrive, as if acknowledging not your presence, but your existence. The others don't. Their gazes slide past you like water around a stone. But this one, this monk with sleeves too long and eyes that hold the color of wet bark, he bows. And it unravels you a little, every time. He never asks your name, but he begins to meet you halfway down the path. You tell yourself it's a coincidence, that he just happens to be carrying water at the same time each week, that the extra rice ball you find on the offering tray is for the crows, not for you, that the folded piece of paper tucked beside the pile of temple sweepings wasn't meant to be found. Still, you read it. Of course you do. The cypress trees behind the bell tower drop their needles in slow, even rhythm. I've begun to wonder if they count time more wisely than we do. No signature, no mark, just brush strokes, neat, deliberate, patient. You tuck it into your sleeve anyway. Weeks pass. Nothing happens, and yet everything does. You begin to walk slower when you climb the hill. You learn the names of the temple's trees. You bring offerings that aren't required, lotus root when it's in season, plum syrup in a corked jar. Once he touches your hand, only for a moment, just to steady a bundle of scrolls you almost drop. But his fingers are calloused from work, warm through the cloth of your sleeve. You feel the contact long after he's gone. That night, you sit by your sleeping mat and think about the way the shadows on the wall seem to lean toward each other, even though they never meet. You know he has taken vows, not just of silence, but of detachment. He is not yours to think about. And yet, you both linger longer each time. There's no poetry between you, no declarations, no sighing glances. But when you pour the tea, he never drinks it until you've gone. And when he sweeps the steps, he always leaves one pine needle unswept, just one, as if to tell you he noticed you came. One morning, you bring an offering of fresh-picked Sancho berries. He doesn't meet you. You wait a little longer than usual. Then a younger monk comes down the steps. He's polite, unreadable. He's taken retreat, the monk says, alone for a season, to clear his thoughts. You bow, say nothing. He doesn't say when he'll return, just that he's gone. The berries stay in your hands a moment longer than they need to. Then you leave them on the temple step and walk away. Winter comes. Your visits stop. The snow on the path grows too deep, and your errands shift. You don't write, of course. You have nothing to write. But you keep the folded note, the one with the cypress tree. Sometimes, when you're alone, you unfold it just to look at the brushwork. You think of things you might say, if he ever appeared again. Did you find what you were looking for beneath all that silence? Do you still leave one pine needle behind? I never learned your name. I'm not sure I want to. But they stay in your thoughts, not on paper. Some feelings are more sacred when they're left unsaid. One early spring, you pass the temple path again, not on purpose. You're carrying pickled mustard greens to a cousin across the valley, and the slope just happens to bring you by the old steps. There's a faint sound of sweeping. At first you think it's the wind, but then you see him, older, not much, but enough. He's sweeping the same path. The sleeves are the same. The motion is still precise, and beside his sandal, just barely, one pine needle rests, untouched. He doesn't look up, and you do not stop. But you leave a small paper-wrapped parcel on the edge of the path as you pass. Inside, a sprig of fresh sancho, still green. Not a letter, not a question, just something alive. A small, quiet way to say, I still remember, I still love, and I understand. They say the most expensive courtesan in the quarter never laughs. She smiles, yes. With the right tilt of her head, the barest curve of her lips, she can make a man believe he's clever, or dangerous, or desirable. But laughter, number laughter, is honest. And honesty has no place in a room where everything, your gaze, your breath, your silk-draped shoulder, is for sale. You've heard the rumors long before you ever see her. She's a tale passed between travelers and merchants over sake. They say her skin is like snow that's never melted, that she wears perfume made from crushed orchids, that her voice is quiet because it's never had to be loud, and that no man, not even the richest, has ever made her laugh. That's the part that sticks in your mind. You are no nobleman, not even a low-ranking samurai, just a clerk's apprentice from across the river. You work with paper and ink and dull calculations, tallying rice, weighing silks, sorting ledgers. You know the worth of a candle by its drip and can estimate the value of a fan by how evenly the ribs are spaced. You've passed the pleasure quarters before, of course, watched the lanterns sway like floating moons above the doorways, smelled the sweet plum wine and powdered rouge, heard the music behind screens made of gold leaf and whispers. But you've never stepped inside, not until the night your master rewards you. A promotion, small but meaningful, enough to give you one evening you won't forget. He hands you a pouch of coins and tells you to act like a man. You don't tell him that you feel more like a boy. They dress you in a borrowed robe, not silk, but it shimmers in the right light. The attendant oils your hair, tightens your sash, powders your face. He warns you to speak carefully, smile often, and never assume affection is real. You are paying for the dream, he says. Don't mistake it for waking. And then he leaves you alone in a room with paper screens painted with cranes in flight. The door slides open, and there she is. You expected someone dazzling, You did not expect someone quiet. She does not enter like a starlet. She glides like smoke. Her robe is soft gold, patterned with pale plum blossoms. Her hair is lacquered into a style so precise it looks like sculpture. But her face is not striking, not in the way you imagined. It's gentler, unreadable, like a poem written in a language you don't know yet. She bows and smiles, not at you exactly, at the space near you, just enough to make your heart twitch. She pours the sake. You've never had sake this sweet. Conversation, you quickly learn, is its own art. She doesn't ask questions. She makes statements designed to guide your answers. The moon tonight is very high. It makes everything seem a little more honest. You agree. Your hands are ink-stained. You must work with records. You nod. There's something admirable in a man who deals in facts. You cannot lie to paper. You say nothing, but she tilts her head just slightly, like she's collecting your silence in a small porcelain bowl and saving it for later. You don't ask about her real name, or how long she's worked here. You don't need to. She gives you a performance, poetry, flute music, a slow and beautiful fan dance that makes your breath catch in your throat. And you, who has always been ordinary, begin to believe you are interesting. She never breaks character. But somewhere between the third and fourth cup of sake, you ask her something careless, something real. Doesn't it get lonely pretending all the time? She blinks once, slowly, then laughs, not loudly, not cruelly, just briefly, like a slip of spring wind through bamboo slats. And it is, without a doubt, real. The air changes. She touches her sleeve, looks down, then back at you, and says quietly, "Yes, just that, and nothing more." You both drink, but the sake is different now. It tastes like water. You do not spend the night, not because you can't, but because it suddenly feels too intimate, too fragile. When you rise to go, she walks you to the edge of the room, not all the way to the gate, just to the first screen. Her sleeve brushes yours. And for one fleeting second, you think about reaching for her hand. But you don't, and neither does she. She only says, "Thank you," and the door slides shut. You return once, much later. The seasons have turned. Your rank has risen. You wear better robes now. You speak more confidently. You ask after her. The hostess tells you without emotion that she retired 2 months ago. Gone where, they don't know. It happens often. You nod as if you'd expected this, as if her absence doesn't feel like the last flicker of a candle you didn't realize had meant so much to you. You never even learned her name. But sometimes when you pour tea alone, you imagine what it might have sounded like if she had told you, and you wonder if she remembers the boy who once made her laugh. Even just once. They never write love poems about girls like you. You don't wear silk. You don't play the biwa or write in elegant cursive. You rise before the light and sweep the kitchen stones with your sleeves tucked up, your breath fogging in the cold. You are the one who chops the firewood, who feeds the birds rice husks in winter, who carries laundry twice your weight across the yard. No one calls you beautiful. No one really calls you much of anything. You are just there, like the smoke that curls up from the kitchen fires, useful, warm, and invisible. And yet, one night, someone sees you, and it changes everything. The storm begins in the late evening. At first, it's just wind, then the sky turns a strange green-gray. Then the clouds burst all at once, like a pail tipping over the roof of the world. The other servants shriek and run indoors. The young mistress cries because her sandals got soaked. The lord of the house curses because the shutters bang in the wind and he can't hear his own reading. But you are sent back out, because the storm lantern, the one hanging at the far end of the orchard path, has gone out, and someone must relight it. It's not supposed to be you, it's supposed to be one of the boys. But the others are busy and no one wants to brave the storm, and you're small and quick and don't complain. So they hand you the lantern with its trembling flame protected behind oiled paper, and they push you toward the door with nothing but your short cloak and straw sandals. You say nothing. You never say no. The rain hits like needles as soon as you step outside. The wind pulls at your sleeves. The orchard path is nothing but mud now, swallowing your feet with every step. You hold the lantern high, but it flickers wildly, threatened at every turn. You wonder, just briefly, if anyone would care if you slipped and fell and didn't come back. But then, ahead, you see the post, the one where the orchard lantern hangs. You kneel beside it, trying to coax the tiny flame to catch. Your fingers are stiff with cold. You can't feel your knees. You whisper to the fire like it's a living thing. Please, just this once. Please don't go out. And then, there's a hand. It comes from behind you. Gentle, but firm. A calloused palm closes around yours, shielding the flame from the wind. You freeze, startled, but the flame steadies. And now there are two hands, two bodies, hunched together in the rain. The lantern glows brighter, casting gold onto wet leaves and tangled hair. You glance up. It's him. You don't know his name. You know his face, though. One of the stable boys, older than you by maybe 3 years, tall, always quiet, always kind to the animals. You've passed him in the yard dozens of times. You think once he may have helped lift a basket from your back. But you'd never spoken. Not until now. His eyes are dark and warm. His hair is soaked through. He says nothing. He just helps you light the lantern. The flame catches. It glows like a tiny sun. You hook the lantern carefully on the post and wipe the rain from your eyes. Then you look at him again, and this time, you both smile. Nothing dramatic, no poems, just two tired smiles in the rain. He doesn't let go of your hand right away. And when he does, his fingers linger for half a second longer than they need to. The walk back is silent, but not lonely. He walks just behind you, close enough that you can hear the soft splash of his footsteps in your wake. When you reach the kitchen porch, you both hesitate. There's no reason to speak, and yet, you turn to say thank you. But he's already gone, back into the night. The days go on, of course. You return to scrubbing and sweeping and sewing. But now, when you cross the yard with a basket of turnips, you sometimes see him near the stables. And when your eyes meet, you smile. He doesn't smile with his mouth. He smiles with his eyes. It is enough. You think about that storm often, about the warm pressure of his hand on yours, about the way the flame danced when he cupped it. You don't tell anyone, not even the other girls in the kitchen. They would laugh. Or worse, they'd be jealous. No one writes love stories about servant girls. But if they did, yours would begin with mud on your knees and a lantern lit in the rain, and a boy whose name you still don't know, but whose hand you remember exactly. You've heard them say that love in the capital is just a game, that everyone is writing poems for each other, exchanging glances behind fans, pretending to be heartbroken when the moon is just a little too round or the sleeves a little too damp. They say it with a curl of the lip, a scoff, but not you. Because you know, sometimes those sleeves hide real things, real feelings, even if no one says them aloud. Your father works for one of the mid-ranking noble houses. He keeps the accounts, keeps his head down, keeps his mouth shut. You do the same. You walk the long corridors in silence, always behind your mother, your gaze lowered, your robe modest. You help serve tea to the higher ladies. You listen more than you speak. But one day, a letter appears in your sleeve, folded neatly, tucked at the edge of your underrobe like a petal caught on the breeze. You feel it before you see it. Software warm. Wrong. You wait until nightfall, when the curtains are drawn and your candle is just a flicker in the dark. Then you unfold it with trembling hands. Just a single line. A poem. Something about the sound of footsteps in fallen plum blossoms. Something about a name that won't leave the wind. It doesn't say your name, but it's for you. You know it. You don't sleep that night. You stare at the ink until it's burned into your mind. Who wrote it? Why? What do they know? Did they see you in the garden that morning, brushing dew from the chrysanthemums? Or the day before, when you knelt to fix the curtain cord and your robe slipped slightly off your shoulder? And why would anyone notice you? You're no lady. You don't glide. You don't paint your teeth black or powder your face. You're always just nearby. But someone saw you, and someone wrote this. And suddenly, you are not invisible anymore. It becomes a game. The next letter comes 3 days later. Tucked inside a folded screen you often clean. Another poem. This one mentions the scent of incense on sleeves and a sigh left in the hall. The handwriting is the same. Graceful, but not too refined. Someone educated, but not noble-born. A man who knows how to write poetry, but not one who writes it for sport. You reread it a dozen times. You start to look forward to scrubbing the hallway floors because sometimes there's something waiting in the shadows, folded, tucked, slid just barely into reach. And each time you read one, something inside you softens, warms, becomes. Eventually, you write back. Just one line. You copy it from a pillow book you once read in secret. You use your most careful hand. And when the wind is strong and no one is watching, you slip it into the same corner of the screen. It's gone the next day, and in its place, another reply. You never see him, not clearly. You think you know, you've guessed. Maybe it's the calligraphy tutor who visits the young masters in the morning. He walks with his sleeves slightly long, always smells of sandalwood, always bows lower than required. Or maybe it's the scribe who works in the back offices, the one who always touches his neck when he sees you, then looks away like it hurt. Whoever it is, he keeps writing, and you keep answering. One poem at a time. Weeks pass. The poems become longer. They start to ask things. What do you dream of? What did your mother name you for? Do you ever walk in the garden alone at night? You answer carefully, truthfully, but not fully. You're not a fool. You know how quickly dreams can turn to ash. But still, your sleeve now smells faintly of ink. Your eyes always scan the room. You smile at the corners of paper. You are alive in a way you weren't before. And it has nothing to do with marriage or duty or beauty. It's just this. The quiet ache of words passed in secret. One evening, you return to your room and find something different. Not a letter, a tiny box. Inside, one hairpin. Wooden, carved, painted with the faintest red plum blossom. No note, no explanation. But you know what it means. You hold it in your palm for a long time, heart pounding like festival drums. You never wear it. You keep it wrapped in cloth, hidden beneath your futon. But sometimes, late at night, you unfold it, just to hold it, just to know someone once saw you and left this behind. Then the letters stop, not with a goodbye, not with a betrayal, just nothing. 1 week, then 2, then 5. The screen corner remains empty. The breeze no longer brings poems. You still clean the hall, still look, but there's nothing, and eventually you stop expecting. That's how things end sometimes. You never find out why. Maybe he left, maybe he was caught, maybe he married. Maybe he simply stopped. But the letters remain. You keep them in a pouch sewn into the lining of your pillowcase. No one ever asks. Years pass. You marry someone else, have children, comb their hair, teach them to bow. But sometimes, when your husband is asleep and the house is quiet, you pull the letters out and read them again by candlelight. They still smell faintly of cedar and smoke. They still make you feel seen. And in that quiet space, beneath the hush of paper and time, you remember what it felt like. To be someone's secret poem. It begins with stillness. The kind of stillness that hangs in the air before dawn, before the temple bell sounds, before the sparrows stir, before the incense is lit. The kind of stillness you can almost drink. You are a servant girl now, grown from the daughter of a broken house into the quiet hands that sweep temple stones before sunrise. No one notices you, but the gods do. Or so you like to think. The temple garden is your domain, not the prayers, not the scriptures, not the golden statue in the main hall. But the garden, yes, that you tend. You know every mossy stone, every winding path, every pine needle where it falls. You rise before the sun, you sweep. You rake the pebbles into soft ripples like water. You pick fallen leaves before they brown. It is the only place in the world where your thoughts don't feel too loud, where your body doesn't feel too seen, where you, a girl with no name anyone remembers, are allowed to move through beauty without being punished for it. And that is where you first notice him. He does not speak. At first you think he's just another monk pausing in the garden on his way to morning prayer. But he's always there. Always at the same hour, when the mist still hugs the cypress trunks, when the lanterns haven't been taken down. He stands near the koi pond, hands folded into his sleeves, eyes lowered, silent, watching the water. You never speak to him. You are not allowed to speak to monks, and he is so still that it would feel like speaking to a statue anyway. But still, you start to notice the way he listens to the wind, the way he pauses by the wisteria like it's whispering to him, the way he smiles, soft and far away, when the morning light breaks through the pine branches just right. You start raking slower when you see him there, not to make him notice, just to stay a little longer in that moment where he breathes the same air as you. You find out his name by accident. You hear one of the elder monks call it when they think he's not listening. He doesn't flinch when he hears it. He just keeps watching the pond, as if names aren't meant to be clung to, as if he left his behind long ago. You say it to yourself sometimes when no one is near, not aloud, just in your mind, like a prayer that isn't asking for anything. One morning, it rains, not the heavy kind, just a fine mist, like the clouds are exhaling softly. You're still sweeping. You always sweep, even if the stones are already clean. And he's there, of course, standing beneath the pine. But today, he glances up and looks at you, really looks, just once. His eyes meet yours, dark, kind, almost amused. And he nods. That's it, just a nod. But it feels like the lanterns around you have all been relit, like the garden is suddenly brighter, though the rain has not stopped. You nod back and say nothing. That becomes your language, not words, not poems, not confessions beneath the moon. Just moments. A glance shared over a fallen blossom. A pause at the well when he's returning from prayer and you are fetching water. The soft sound of his sandals brushing the stones behind you. Sometimes you think he must hear your thoughts. The way your heart pounds when he nears. The way your hands fumble when he's too close. But he never shows it. He remains composed, peaceful, as if love, to him, is not a burning thing, but a lantern, low, steady, flickering just enough to warm the dark. There are rules, of course. He is a monk. He cannot love you, not with hands, not with words. You cannot love him either, not openly, not truly. But somehow the garden becomes the place where rules bend, just slightly, where a breath taken at the right time can feel like touch, where two shadows cast by lantern light can almost seem to lean into each other, even if their owners don't. And so it continues. Weeks, months, maybe years. The same silence, the same stillness. But in that stillness, something grows, something as fragile as moss, as soft as sandalwood smoke. One evening, near the end of spring, you find a folded paper tucked beside the pond. It isn't addressed. There is no seal. But you know it's for you. Inside, a brush painting, just a single lotus, painted in gray ink with the gentlest hand you've ever seen. No words, no signature, just the lotus. You fold it back up and hide it in your sleeve. It is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given you. The next day, he is gone. No one says why. No one speaks of it. Perhaps he was transferred to another temple. Perhaps he left the mountain to seek silence elsewhere. Perhaps the gods simply took him back. You never find out. You only know that the koi pond feels lonelier now, that the morning light no longer pauses in the same places, that the garden still blooms, still exhales its fragrant breath, but your footsteps are heavier. You still sweep, you still rake the stones. But it feels more like remembering now, less like tending. Years later, another servant finds the folded paper in the sleeve of your old robe. By then you've moved on, married, left the temple behind. They ask you who drew it. You say it was no one. A monk, maybe. You can't quite recall, and you smile when you say it. The soft, quiet smile of someone who once stood in a garden beside a man who never touched her, never kissed her, never held her hand, and who loved her more deeply than anyone ever would again. It starts with white silk and snow, so much snow. You can't feel your fingers, even beneath layers of robes, but you smile anyway, because everyone is watching, and because you've been told since childhood that a proper bride does not shiver. You are 17, maybe 18. You are not sure anymore. Age stopped mattering the moment they chose your husband. He is a samurai, a high-ranking one, which means you will live in a compound with sliding doors that never quite close against the cold. You will speak politely, move slowly, and never ever raise your voice, which is fine, because love, you've been taught, has nothing to do with marriage. The wedding procession was a quiet one. Your hair was combed until your scalp ached, your face painted pale like moonlight, your eyes lowered, never meeting his, not even once. You wore the uchikake, heavy with cranes and pine branches embroidered in gold. You walked on high geta sandals that made your ankles wobble, and you bowed to every elder, every altar, every ancestor whose name you did not yet know. He did not speak much. He looked like a painted figure behind a folding screen, beautiful, unmoving, unreadable. And yet something in his stillness reminded you of the winters when you were small, how the world could be so frozen and yet still hold so much life beneath the surface. Your new home was large, too large, so many rooms, so many walls, and you were given your own chamber, far from the hearth, cold, quiet, always neat because there was nothing to disturb. He did not visit often. Samurai were busy. Sometimes he would come back in the late evening, his armor smelling of horse leather and frost. He would nod at you, say a word or two, then sleep, back turned. That was fine. You did not expect more. You were the daughter of a minor official. You were lucky to marry up. Love was a luxury for poets. But there was something about him. He never raised his voice. Not once. When he passed the garden, he stopped to look at the koi. When he sat at meals, he held his chopsticks with gentle care, like someone who had been taught not to break delicate things. And once, just once, you saw him hold a sparrow in his palm. It had flown into the wooden beam above the veranda and fallen, stunned. He had knelt, lifted it without a sound, and cupped it so softly you forgot to breathe. You watched from behind the shoji screen. He didn't know. When the bird stirred and flew off again, he simply watched it go, then walked away. It made you wonder if he had love inside him, buried deep like spring water beneath frozen earth. You didn't expect to see it. You didn't ask for it. But you began to notice the small things, the way he left your favorite pickled plums untouched in the serving bowl, the way your calligraphy brush was always freshly trimmed before you noticed it had grown dull, the way your chamber was the only one with fresh camellias in a porcelain vase each morning. He never said they were from him. No one ever saw who left them. But they were always red, and red camellias meant unspoken love. One night, snow fell again. Thick, quiet, the kind that hushes the whole world. You couldn't sleep. Your fingers were too cold, even under the futon. So you sat by the sliding door, watching the snow gather on the black tiled roofs. You didn't expect to hear footsteps, but there he was, standing in the outer corridor, holding something in his hand. A folded haori, his. He didn't speak, just stepped forward and draped it over your shoulders. It smelled like cedar, and snow, and the quiet of mountains in winter. Cold, he murmured. That was all. Then he walked away. You sat there for a long time after that, haori wrapped around you, wondering how a single word could feel like a vow. Spring came late that year, but when the first plum blossoms opened in the courtyard, he came to you again, this time with a scroll. He held it out, eyes lowered. You unrolled it with careful hands. A painting, ink on paper, a red camellia bending slightly in the snow. Below it, a single poem. If I must not touch the flame, then let me warm you from the shadow, burning silently. You looked up. He was already walking away, no confession, no expectation, just that small offering of quiet feeling. And somehow that was more intimate than any touch. You never told anyone. Not your maid, not your family, not even your future children. But from that day on, when he returned from his duties and passed your chamber, you began to leave your door slightly open. Just slightly. A gesture, an invitation, a pause in the cold. Sometimes he would sit on the veranda, not speaking, just watching the garden with you. And in those moments, you would sip tea side by side, not touching, not naming what was shared, but knowing. Years later, when your hair had silvered and his steps slowed, the camellias still bloomed each winter. You would find one, always one, resting beside your cushion in the morning. Even when he no longer had the strength to walk far, even when his hands trembled too much to hold a sparrow, he never spoke of it, and neither did you. Because some love stories in medieval Japan were not written in letters or sung in verses. They were folded into robes, left in snow, painted in silence, felt in the space between two warm cups of tea where no words were needed. You were never going to be a samurai, not with your back curved from hours hunched over clay, your sleeves rolled up, and your fingernails packed with red earth that even the river couldn't wash out. You were a potter's apprentice, one of many, and not a particularly gifted one. But what you had, what made the others sigh and shake their heads, was that you cared too much. You touched the clay like it was skin. You traced the rims of your bowls like you were committing the shape of someone's lips to memory. It was foolish. Everyone said so. Porcelain doesn't need poetry, your master barked. But still, you gave every cup a little tilt, every plate a secret curve. Because you weren't just shaping vessels. You were trying to remember her. She came every few weeks, always at dusk when the light turned gold and the shadows of the kiln licked up the walls like lazy brushstrokes. A merchant's daughter with ink-stained sleeves and a quiet smile. She bought teacups, only ever one, always the one you had made. You knew because you watched. Not obviously, just from behind the racks of drying pots. But you saw her eyes scan the shelves, pause on yours, then drift away as if it had been a coincidence. It never was. And every time, when she handed over her coins, she would brush her thumb along the lip of the cup, just once, and smile to herself. You wondered if she knew it was you who shaped it. Probably not, but maybe she guessed. You tried to speak to her once. You waited by the stall, feigning a casual sweep of dust with a straw broom. She came, brows lifted in mild surprise. You said something about the weather, or the tea shops across the river. She only nodded, polite. But then, just before she turned to go, she looked at you directly and said, "The last cup you made. It cooled quickly, but the warmth lasted in the hand." You didn't know what to say. By the time you thought of something, she was already gone. After that, you tried harder. You began to leave tiny details only she would notice. A faint swirl at the base of the bowl, like the wind curling across a scroll. a line of glaze that shimmered blue when turned to the light. One day, you shaped a pair of cups, matching just slightly, and placed them apart on different shelves. She bought them both, didn't say a word, but when she left, you found yourself grinning like a fool with clay in your hair. Seasons passed. The kiln broke once. You spent weeks sleeping beside it in the bitter cold, stoking it with pine wood, fingers cracked and bleeding. You didn't care, because she came again, this time in spring. Her sleeves were lighter now, her sandals dusted with cherry petals. She chose a small sake bottle with a crooked neck, one you'd almost thrown out. You asked, "Why that one?" She turned it over in her hands, cradling it. "Because it looks like it was made by someone who knew what it was like to wait." You didn't ask what she meant. You didn't want to hope too much. It was one evening, just as the fireflies began to blink lazily in the trees, when she lingered at the stall longer than usual. "You always work late," she said. "I don't like to leave things half-formed." She tilted her head. "Is that about pottery or something else?" You flushed, unsure. She held up the latest cup, a pale green glaze like bamboo leaves after rain. "It's beautiful," she said, running her finger across the rim again. "But lonely." You looked at her, really looked. And before you could lose your courage, you asked, "Would you like one to match it?" A pause, then the softest nod. After that, she began to bring paper. Small things, folded notes, tucked beneath the coins she left behind. You never read them in front of anyone. You kept them in a cracked bowl under your sleeping mat. Poems, little observations, sometimes only a haiku. Crack in the kiln wall lets the winter light come in. Still, the fire holds. Sometimes just one word. Soon. You didn't reply. You weren't sure how. So instead, you poured your replies into porcelain. A sake cup with 2 tiny birds in the glaze. A teapot shaped like a mountain shrine. A rice bowl, its inside etched with waves, homecoming in ceramic form. You never knew if she understood. But she kept coming. And that was enough. Then one day, she didn't. Not for weeks. Not for months. The seasons changed again. And again. Your master said she probably married, or moved, or forgot. But you kept making the cups anyway, just in case, one for each week she was gone. Soon, you had a shelf full of them, all silent, all waiting. It was almost a year later, on a windy day when dust clung to everything and the kiln's breath barely held its heat, that she returned. She didn't say anything, just walked up, picked up the latest cup, simple, white, no decoration, and held it to her cheek. "You kept going," she whispered. "I had to." She unwrapped a bundle from her sleeve. Inside, your old cup, the very first one, cracked clean down the middle. "I dropped it," she said, eyes soft, "but I kept the pieces. You took them quietly. Then I'll mend it." "With gold?" she asked, smiling faintly. "No," you said. "With time." They say love in medieval Japan didn't always come with vows. It came in patience, in glazes that ran too thin but were still fired with care, in shelves lined with hopeful silence, and cups made just for one person's hands. Sometimes love wasn't declared, it was simply poured. And if you were lucky, it was received. Somewhere in a wooden box tucked inside a monastery library there lies a folded letter. The paper is yellowed now, curled at the edges like dried leaves. The ink has faded from black to the soft brown of old soil, but the brushstrokes are still careful, measured, elegant, a little too neat. It was never sent. It was never even sealed. But someone wrote it once, and when they did, they meant every word. You remember when you wrote it. You were 19. She was already gone, not forever, just far. Far enough that the days stretched out like rice fields in winter, quiet, empty, waiting for something to grow again. You met her in the capital. She wasn't supposed to notice you. You were a scribe's assistant, barely worth a bow. She was a calligraphy student, the daughter of someone important. But on your third morning, sweeping inkstones and washing brushes, she looked up from her work and asked, "Are you the one who always replaces my paper?" You said yes. She nodded. "That's kind. I ruin a lot of paper." You told her it wasn't ruined. It just hadn't said what it needed to say yet. She smiled at that. And then she started ruining even more paper just to keep talking to you. She was better with words than you were. You could copy anything perfectly. Sutras, edicts, even love poems. But they were never yours. Your hand was skilled. Your heart was cautious. Hers was all rain and fire. She wrote poems that made old monks blush. She scribbled jokes in the margins of official scrolls. She carved the word yearning into a plum branch with her thumbnail and told you it hurt, but it was worth it. Sometimes, late at night, you'd find a scrap of paper slipped under your mat. A storm came last night. Your absence was louder than the thunder. Come by the pond tomorrow. And you always did. But she left. They all did, eventually. Her father secured her a marriage, not cruel, just convenient. A merchant's son who lived along the coastal trade roads. "He appreciates literature," she said, looking down at her lap. "That's something." You nodded. You didn't ask her to stay. You just helped her pack. She left behind one brush and a small inkstone, carved with a crane in flight. You kept them both. And the day after she was gone, you finally wrote her something that was your own. You began, "There are things I never said while you were here. I think I was afraid of hearing myself say them out loud. But paper listens more gently than people do." You told her about the way her laugh stayed in your ears long after she'd walked away, how your fingers always trembled after touching the paper she'd written on. You wrote that the last time you saw her, she looked like spring pretending to be autumn, bright but fading. You wrote that you had loved her. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like a wick holds fire, quiet, steady, warm in the dark. You rewrote that letter 5 times. You tried sealing it once, then opened it again. You added a poem to the bottom. The brush dips in ink. But still, I cannot write you out of my silence. You meant to deliver it. You asked travelers if they knew her new household. You considered walking the roads yourself. But days passed, then weeks. And one morning you woke up and realized you hadn't mentioned her name in 3 days. It scared you. So you folded the letter and placed it inside your writing box, beneath the brush she left behind. And there it stayed. Years rolled on like scrolls unfurled in the wind. You copied legal decrees, monastic records, family letters. You became trusted, respected, quietly forgotten. Every now and then, someone brought a letter written in a woman's hand, and your breath would catch before you even read the seal. But it was never her. You never married. People stopped asking why. You told yourself it was the ink, that too much time spent writing about love had used up all your capacity for living it. But you knew better. You were waiting, not for her exactly, but for the memory of her to soften enough that you could let it go. One autumn, a traveler came to the temple gates with a donation of paper and brushes, sent, they said, by a merchant's widow whose late husband had loved poetry. You wondered. You wanted to ask. But you didn't. You just thanked them and accepted the gift. That night, you took out the old letter. You read it slowly, mouthing the words like sutras, careful not to speak them too loud. They didn't sting anymore. They felt soft, like cotton that had been worn thin. You didn't cry. You just lit a lamp and, for the first time in decades, dipped a brush in ink not meant for someone else. You added a final line. Some loves are not lost. They just remain unread. Letters never sent. They say love in medieval Japan wasn't always about 2 people ending up together. Sometimes it was the patience of letting someone go. Sometimes it was the courage to speak only on paper. And sometimes it was the strange comfort of knowing that even a forgotten letter, hidden in a box, never reaching its destination, could still hold a heart inside it. Love didn't always need to arrive. Sometimes it only needed to be written. There is a kind of silence that only comes with falling petals, not the silence of absence or of sleep or of grief, but the soft, living silence of spring in full bloom, the kind where you can hear the petals brushing the air as they fall, one by one, blanketing the path like forgotten words. That was the kind of silence that hung over the garden the day you saw him again. You hadn't planned it. Of course you hadn't. You were simply walking. The shrine garden had always been a peaceful place, especially in the spring, when the sakura bloomed in a canopy of pale pink above the stone paths. You came for the quiet, for the scent of damp bark, for the sound of bamboo water fountains clicking lazily as they tipped and filled and tipped again. But there he was, standing just beyond the lantern tower, facing away from you, hands clasped behind his back. And just like that, the years folded. He hadn't changed much, maybe a little grayer at the temples, his posture a little more tired, like a robe that had been worn one too many times. But the way he tilted his head when he looked up into the branches, that was the same. That quiet wonder, that stillness, as if he was listening for something. And suddenly you were no longer a widow coming to light incense for your ancestors. You were a girl again, a girl in borrowed sandals, breathless from running across the wooden bridge to meet him behind the peach trees where no one could see. You hadn't spoken in years, not since he'd left for the coast, promised to a shipwright's daughter, a family arrangement. You remembered the way he held your hand that last time, trembling as if the parting was something physical. You remembered how you nodded and smiled, like it didn't matter. And then you went home and didn't come out for 3 days. He had written once, a short letter, too polite, too neat. You never replied. And then the seasons passed. You almost turned away. The quiet, sensible voice in your head said, "It's been too long. What would you even say?" But then he turned, and his eyes met yours. He didn't smile. Not at first, but he blinked like someone waking up from a dream. And then, slowly, his expression softened. So you walked forward. You didn't rush. You let the air carry you gently, like the petals drifting between you. He bowed. You bowed, and for a moment, nothing needed to be said. "I wasn't expecting to see you here," he said. His voice was lower than you remembered, rougher around the edges. But it still had that pause between sentences, like he was always choosing his next words carefully. "I come every spring," you said, and then added, before you could stop yourself, "You used to bring me here." He looked away, just slightly. "I remember." There was a long pause. Then he gestured toward the bench beneath the largest tree, the one you used to sit under back when you shared oranges and watched the lanterns light up one by one. "Would you like to sit?" he asked. You hesitated and then nodded. The bench was cold, but the sun filtered through the blossoms, dappling your sleeves in pink light. You both sat a little too formally, hands folded in your laps, knees just far enough apart to pretend you weren't remembering. He was the first to speak again. "My wife passed 5 winters ago." You turned slightly. "I'm sorry." He nodded, eyes on the gravel path. You didn't ask for details. You didn't need them. Instead, you said, "My husband died the year before that." He looked up at you, surprised, but not shocked. "I didn't know," he said. You smiled faintly. "You weren't meant to." Another long silence. A crow called from the temple gate. The petals kept falling. "Do you ever wonder," he said quietly, "what would have happened if things had gone differently?" You didn't answer right away, because of course you'd wondered. In the quiet hours, in the spaces between your children's laughter and your husband's polite affection, you had wondered. You had replayed the moments, the secret notes, the near kisses, the time he almost stayed but didn't. "I try not to," you said. He chuckled softly. "That sounds like you." You turned to look at him. And yet, here you are. His smile faded. not sadly, just gently. "I didn't expect it to feel like this," he admitted. "Seeing you again." You watched him. "You mean tender?" He blinked. "Yes. You didn't talk about love, not directly. Not the love that was, or the one that might have been. But you talked about other things. The way the garden had changed. Fewer lotus ponds now, more azaleas. The temple's new bell, deeper and louder than the old one. You told him about your daughter's wedding. He told you about his grandson's obsession with fishing. It was small talk, but it carried weight, like folding cranes from old letters, delicate, familiar. And when the shadows began to stretch long across the garden path, he stood. "I should go." You nodded. "So should I." But neither of you moved. He looked down at his hands. "I kept something," he said. "A poem you wrote. You slipped it into my sleeve the day I left." You looked up. "I thought I only dreamed that." He shook his head. "I read it once a year." You felt your throat tighten, just a little. "What did it say?" you asked, even though you remembered. He recited it from memory. "If the wind carries my words to where you wander, leave your window cracked." You stood together beneath the blossom tree, one last time. He bowed. You bowed. This time, a little deeper. When he turned and walked away, you didn't watch him go. You looked up at the sky instead, where the blossoms drifted down like little pink ghosts of what might have been. You didn't feel regret, just a soft fullness, like something had been returned to you after being lost for many years. Not love exactly, but the echo of it. And sometimes the echo is enough. You don't remember when the mirror stopped being kind. Maybe it was one of those spring mornings when your hands trembled just slightly while braiding your hair. Or maybe it was the day you tried to thread a needle and had to squint too long in the light. You didn't say anything. You just squinted, threaded, and carried on. That was the way of things. Time didn't announce itself loudly. It arrived like dew, quiet, inevitable, soft. It kissed your fingers, your knees, your neck. It curled itself into your spine when you sat too long. It softened your voice and stilled your pace, and sometimes, just sometimes, it stole the spark from your eyes. But you kept walking, kept waking before dawn, lighting incense, warming rice porridge over the hearth. Because that, too, was the way of things. Still, some mornings caught you off guard. You'd tilt your head in the lacquered mirror, smoothing your kimono collar, and wonder, "Is that really me?" You wouldn't say it aloud. That would be vain. Silly. But there was a quiet ache in seeing yourself become someone older, someone quieter. A woman whose name was now followed by San instead of Chan. A woman who was offered a seat before she asked. A woman no longer asked for by name, only introduced as someone's mother, someone's widow, someone's grandmother. And yet, there had been a time when people had looked at you and smiled without thinking. A time when someone whispered to you beneath the rain-soaked trees, "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." You still remembered the way he said it, like a secret, like a promise. You didn't expect to hear it again. Not now, not after all the years, all the winters, all the losses. But it came, in the most ordinary way, from a stranger. It was market day. You'd come down the hillside path with your little basket, the one with the fraying edge. The morning was warm but windless, and the stalls smelled of scallions and vinegar and roasted chestnuts. There were children tugging at sleeves, chickens squabbling underfoot, someone shouting about fresh eel. You weren't in a rush. You never were these days. You took your time picking through the radishes, brushing the dirt from their roots. The merchant bowed to you respectfully. You were known in this market, familiar, predictable, one of the quiet ones who came alone and bought modestly. You'd just handed over your coins when you felt it, a soft touch on your sleeve. You turned. He was younger than you, perhaps 50, perhaps less. A traveling ink vendor, judging by his wares. His face was sun-darkened, his kimono dusty, his voice careful when he spoke. "Forgive me, Obasan," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you." You smiled politely. "It's quite all right." He hesitated, then held out something. A small folded paper. "A poem," he said. "Just a humble one." You blinked. "For me?" He bowed. "I hope you don't mind. I saw you standing in the light and I had to write it." You took it, half amused, half confused. The paper was warm from his hand. You unfolded it slowly. It was short. Even the plum tree bows its head this morning. You walked beneath it. You didn't know what to say. You looked up, surprised. He looked embarrassed now. "I hope it wasn't improper. I thought you should know. You are beautiful." You stood very still. The market went on around you, loud, busy, alive. But you didn't hear any of it. Only the wind brushing your sleeves, the poem still trembling in your fingers. You weren't young. You weren't adorned in silks. Your face was marked with years, your hair streaked with gray. You didn't sparkle the way girls once did. But in that moment, someone had looked at you and seen something else. Seen you. You thanked him. With a soft bow, a quiet voice, a grace that came not from surprise but from memory. You didn't keep the poem. That night you folded it into the coals of the fire, not out of rejection, but because you didn't need to read it again. You had memorized it already. And sometimes, when you swept the porch at sunrise or stirred the rice with your wooden paddle, you'd whisper the lines under your breath. "Even the plum tree bows its head this morning." You walked beneath it. You never saw the man again. But that was all right. He had given you something you didn't know you still needed. The knowledge that even now, even here, even after all the seasons passed, you could still be seen. You could still be beautiful. The wind has changed. You feel it in the way your sleeves tug more insistently as you walk the garden path. In the way the leaves no longer whisper but rustle, dry and definite, like old scrolls being turned by unseen hands. The morning dew lingers longer now, and the evening crickets begin their song just after the sun dips behind the tiled rooftops. Everything is slowing, even you. But you're not sad, not exactly, just aware. The way an old pine tree creaks a little louder in the wind. The way the river doesn't rush anymore, but hums, low and steady and deep in its belly. You've begun sorting through old things. Not because you've been asked to, not because anything is wrong, but because it feels right. The drawers are full after all. The corners hold bits of lives that once burned bright and now only flicker. You find them there, tucked into a cedarwood box wrapped in soft rice paper. The letters. They weren't hidden, not really, just left alone for a long while. Years maybe, maybe more. You unfold the first one slowly. The creases crack a little. His handwriting was always careful. Not elegant, but deliberate. The brush strokes steady. No flourishes, no games, just him. You remember the day he gave it to you. You were still young enough to be shy about holding his gaze. He'd written it instead of saying what he felt, because words spoken aloud could be overheard. But words on paper were sacred. Private, tucked away. In that first letter, he'd said something like, "If I am ever reborn, I hope it is as the breeze that lifts your hair." You'd read it again and again, lips barely moving, heart thudding like festival drums. You read it again now. But the thudding is gone. Instead, there's only a faint warmth, a memory not of the words, but of the way you'd held the letter close to your chest, alone under the moon, trying to believe it was real. There are others. Some are from him, some from others. And some, you'd almost forgotten, are the ones you wrote but never sent. Letters to men you loved from a distance. A samurai you watched every fifth day in the training yard. A monk who gave you a peach blossom and nothing more. A boy who played the biwa beneath your window and never knew your name. You'd written to them all, never to be read, just to make the feeling real. Some were angry, some were aching, some were just lonely. A girl's ink-stained attempts to carve space in a world that asked her to be quiet. You hold one now. It's yellowed, the corners curling. The ink has faded, but the words still hum with youth. I don't want to be graceful. I want to be chosen. You smile at that. Poor girl. She didn't know back then how many times love would arrive not with fire and fanfare, but as a bowl of warm soup placed beside you, as a robe folded carefully before you woke, as a silence that stayed even when everything else left. You start a small fire in the brazier, not for warmth, just for the ritual of it. One by one, the letters return to ash, not out of bitterness, but gratitude. You don't need them anymore. You've carried them long enough, in your sleeves, in your memory, in the bend of your back and the slowness of your smile. They've done their part, and now they can go. Outside, the persimmon tree is heavy with fruit. You pluck one, fingers stiff but sure, and peel it slowly with your short knife. The skin falls in one perfect coil. The flesh is soft, almost overripe. You take a bite. Sweet. Not the wild sweetness of youth, but the mellow, honeyed kind that stays on the tongue. The kind you learn to savor. Inside, your granddaughter is sewing by the lamp. Her fingers are quick. Her eyes don't yet know weariness. She hums a song you don't recognize. You listen anyway. You've been loved in many ways. Quietly, secretly, deeply, briefly. Some loves were yours to hold. Some were only yours to feel. Some slipped through your fingers like silk. Some never even began. But they were all yours. And that means something. That means everything. Tomorrow, the temple bells will ring to mark the changing season. You'll wake early, as you always do. You'll warm the rice, light the incense, brush your hair with slow, practiced strokes. And maybe you'll write just one more letter. Not to be sent, just to be written. Because even now, even at the edge of things, your heart remembers how to speak. You return to the temple alone this time. The path is the same as it has always been, narrow, moss-lined, gentle underfoot. But you feel each step differently now. Not heavy, not weak, just reverent, as if your very bones remember something sacred beneath the dirt. Your sandals whisper against stone. The trees lean in like old friends. The wind carries the scent of camellia and cedar, and the blossoms are beginning to fall. Again. It's always this time of year, the way the petals come loose and scatter like a slow, elegant farewell. Each one drifting so lazily you wonder if they ever truly mean to land. But they do, and when they do, they settle without fuss. No cry, no rustle, just stillness. You sit on the bench beneath the flowering tree. It's the same one, the same bench, the same tree. Everything looks unchanged, but you're older now, not just in years, in seeing. You remember the first time you sat here. You were young, so young your sleeves still felt foreign, your voice still cautious, your dreams still crisp. A boy had walked with you, not a lord, not a poet, just a boy with kind eyes and nervous hands. He didn't say much, neither did you. But you remember that your knees touched, just slightly, and in that touch was a future that never came to pass. He left eventually, or maybe you did. The memory doesn't argue the details, it only keeps the feeling. The warmth of early love, the tenderness of a maybe. You've sat here many times since, with others, alone, in silence, in prayer, and now, once again. There's something peaceful about the way love softens over time. When you're young, you think it has to burn, that it must be loud to be real, grand gestures, heartbeats like thunder. But now you understand. Love, in the end, is quiet. It's the way the tea is poured before you ask. It's the hands that pull the blanket over your shoulders in the night. It's the years where no poems are written, no lanterns lit, but the presence remains anyway. You unfold a small cloth from your sleeve. Inside is a dried blossom, faded to almost nothing now, its edges curled like old parchment. You don't remember where you first picked it up. Maybe from this very spot, maybe another temple, maybe from your daughter's hair on the day she married, or your mother's sleeve when she was ill, or maybe from the lap of a man who held your hand through one hard winter. It doesn't matter, it's all the same blossom now, all the same love. The monks chant somewhere deeper in the temple grounds. You hear them faintly, like wind moving through hollow bamboo. You used to think love was something you had to hold on to, grasp tightly, or else it would vanish. But now, watching the petals drift down like little boats in the breeze, you understand. It was never about holding. It was about noticing, being there when it came, and letting it go when it was time. A young couple walks past you. The girl's kimono is too bright, the boy's shoulders too stiff with pride. They glance at each other in that bashful, sidelong way, stealing glances as if afraid to be seen in the act of hoping. You smile. Poor things. They have no idea what they're beginning, or how many versions of themselves they'll become, how love will teach them to become quiet, patient, invisible in the best ways, how they will fight, forgive, forget, and remember, how they will love each other for real only after the first idea of love has passed. They do not see you. That is how it should be. You were once them, and one day they will be you. The temple bell rings, not loud, not urgent, just one long, slow note that echoes across the rooftops and settles into the trees. Time has passed. A life has passed, not a famous one, not one carved in stone or sung by the court poets, but yours. A life made of small moments, of letter writing and hand-holding, of stolen glances, of patient waiting, of quiet grief, of lingering joy, of loving again and again in 1,000 unnoticed ways. You brush a petal from your lap. It lands softly on the path, and for the first time in a very long time you feel something strange. Not sadness, not yearning, just enough. This life, with all its soft aches and tender hours, was enough. You were loved, and you loved, not always perfectly, not always loudly, but truly. As you rise, the wind picks up. The blossoms swirl a little faster now, dancing across the temple grounds like playful spirits. You walk away slowly, each step deliberate, and behind you, the petals fall, as they always have, as they always will. And that's the end of tonight's story. Not the kind with a happy ending, not even the kind with a sad one, just a quiet one, the kind that lingers. A story of two people who never held hands, who never confessed anything out loud, but who still remembered each other every time the plum blossoms fell. Because sometimes love doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be carried, softly, through the years. If this story helped you wind down tonight, I'd be so grateful if you left a like or a comment. Maybe tell me where you're listening from, or what part of the story stayed with you the most. And if you enjoy these slow, beautiful journeys through history, you might want to subscribe for more sleep stories just like this one. Quiet stories, soft stories, stories that don't rush but walk beside you, all the way into sleep. Until next time, sleep well.